are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Join with me, as always, it's Zeeshan.
Yo.
Alright, man. So I know it's been a while since we last posted an episode. Things kind of happened. We ended up taking a vacation, kind of going out to California, exploring there for a little bit. And then life kind of happened,
Listen, man, Cali's nice, bro.
Cali's nice. But yeah, got back, had to deal with, real life after a vacation, which is never fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend it to anybody. But at the same time, then after that, I ended up falling sick, and then family stuff. Yeah, there was a lot going on, pretty much. But we are back, and you know what else is coming back? The NBA. Basketball is back. The preseason has been going on, and for us real fans, we really don't give a shit about the preseason. But
yeah, man. Preseason is for all the fake fans that overreact to everything in the preseason.
Pretty much. But it's basketball nonetheless. And it's a sign that, we're going to be getting basketball for at least the next 7-8 months, which is great for us.
Well, after a couple of seasons ago, let's hope that actually happens.
That's the plan.
You gotta always worry about it at this point, bro.
Yeah, we never know what's going to happen. But what we do know is going to happen, and as we kind of promised in our last episode, and if you haven't checked that out, definitely check it out. We basically did our yearly tradition at this point, which is to break down our preseason predictions for the standings for each conference. Now, last episode, we did the Western Conference, and as promised, we're doing the Eastern Conference. And it's kind of a good thing that we waited on doing the Eastern Conference, maybe not this long, but it's mainly because things in the Eastern Conference has dramatically shifted. There was a blockbuster trade that we'll get into. Kevin Durant rescinded his trade request. Kyrie Irving is still a member of the Brooklyn Nets. Ben Simmons showed up on an NBA court. So there's a lot of different things that were happening in the NBA and in the Eastern Conference that greatly would impact our predictions for the standings. And, man, just looking at the Eastern Conference, it's going to be a dogfight.
It's going to be a bloodbath, similar to the Western Conference as well. Listen, man, we're in the most talented period the NBA has ever seen by far. It's actually insane how much talent there is. Now, if you look at even, the 9th, 10th seeds in each conference, this wasn't happening in, 2013. Even 10 years ago, no team past, the 7th seed had this much talent that there is now on a 10th seed team.
And I know the play-in gets a lot of hate, and I still am not 100% sold on the format of the play-in, but it has definitely changed things in terms of, the level of competitiveness has changed, because now a 10th seed has a chance to make it to the playoffs, and, it makes 1 through 10 pretty interesting.
And especially now, I think, now that we're seeing this level of talent where 10th seed teams are actually this good as well now, I think the play-in works a lot better than I originally thought. I have to admit, especially when, as you said, it's so competitive, and we have competitive games between loaded 9 and 10 seeds. I think it works out.
Yeah, I think they and again, this is a conversation for another day, but I think they need to tweak kind of the consequences for the 7th and 8th seeds. I think that's the main part they have to tweak, because again, I feel like they're still getting penalized the most versus the 9 and 10 seeds. But either way, the play-in has definitely introduced a new level of competition, which I guess was the goal of the NBA implementing the system. That being said, the Eastern Conference was not an easy conference to predict. But what was easy to predict was the number 1 seed. So starting us off with the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, our prediction, we're going to be going with the Milwaukee Bucks as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. We're projecting anywhere between 55 to 60 wins. And the main reason for that is they're basically bringing back the exact same team as last year. They added a couple of guys that they added, Joe Ingles, I think, was the main guy that they added. But it's the same team. And I think the biggest thing for the Bucks, and what really, I guess hindered them last season, was injuries. Drew Holiday started to get hurt. Chris Middleton got hurt in the playoffs. That really hurt them.
And again, if Chris Middleton hadn't gotten hurt, I think we can... Even Boston fans would admit Chris Middleton, the Boston Celtics killer, Milwaukee probably would have gone out that.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Now, again, it's all, hindsight 2020 at this point. But either way, Chris Middleton, the Bucks just had a lot of injuries. And, again, they still have arguably the best player in the conference. Giannis is still there. He's still going to be a bona fide MVP candidate. And, again, the system was built around Giannis. It's still a good system. Players coming back healthy. They're going to be solid on both ends of the floor. But I think the main reason why we put them as the number one seed, and this is kind of our trend that we like to do, is the Bucks give us the least amount of questions. Like, we're not really questioning, how are things going to fit or what are things going to look like, because we've already seen it. We know what to expect, and that level of continuity we expect to continue throughout the regular season.
As was the case for our Western Conference predictions as well. The continuity is a key factor we see all the time in the regular season, right? Playoffs might be a different story, but regular season, when everyone's trying to build up their team and get that chemistry going, teams that already have that chemistry there and already have that bond usually tend to work out pretty well in the regular season, at least. For our second seed, we are predicting the Philadelphia 76ers with anywhere.
Philadelphia Rockets.
Yeah, Philadelphia Rockets now, right? Shout out Daryl Morey. We're
Brought
projecting
the
them
band back
between 53 and 58 wins. And here's the thing, right? The Philadelphia 76ers, they had a talented team last season. They struggled. Obviously, you add in such a major piece like James Harden into that team. You're going to have a bunch of questions. You're going to have a bunch of chemistry issues. And they did not look great in the playoffs at all. However, coming into this season, you now have a full training camp with James Harden and with Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, we know, is a perennial MVP candidate. And I think he's really going to gun for it this year. He has, he doesn't have the Nikola Jokic in front of him. Though, again, Nikola Jokic will be MVP, but MVP candidate. Nobody's giving it to him this time. Nobody's going to give him 3 years in a row, right? So Joel Embiid will gun for the MVP. James Harden, you're getting a full training camp with him, and he looks much better than he did last season, at least in the preseason.
He had a whole offseason visit all the Philly strip clubs, so he's good.
Yeah, and he had a whole offseason to recover as well, right? That hamstring injury clearly still plagued him last season, so we'll see how much of last season was related to, just decline due to age, and how much of it was related to injury. Another big important factor for the Philadelphia 76ers is Tyrese Maxey. This guy looks really, really good. He was already amazing last season, especially in the playoffs where we saw that firsthand as Raptors fans how good of a player he was, and he looks even better this season.
He's so polished, man. Like, in terms of like how young he is, and also just like, again, now he has guys like James Harden to kind of teach him new ways to score and get to the rim. For an attacker like that with his speed, and the 3-point shot has greatly improved for Maxey as well. So I think he's just an overall better player. And again, when you're talking about James Harden with his injury history, now that you have a guy like Maxey that you can legitimately start next to Harden, just takes a lot of pressure off him, because now Maxey can kind of take a lot of the scoring duties, and Harden can do what he kind of likes to do now, which is to just play make.
And again, it works out really well, right? Then Daryl Morey made a bunch of good additions in the offseason, hence the Philadelphia Rockets name. He added number 1 DeAnthony Melton, which I think was a very under the radar, but I think a very good pickup. He showed great flashes with the Memphis Grizzlies.
I think he was on the Rockets too at one point.
I don't think so.
I kind of remember DeAnthony Melton being there, but either way, Melton is, again,
he's a good tall guard. Can play make, can play some defense, can score a little bit. They added Montrezl Harrell, who, he is what he is at this point. He's not going to get that big contract, but he serves a purpose for your team, right? He can get buckets for you off the bench, and it's a great pairing to have with Joel Embiid starting for you. And then you added the 2 former Rockets, Daniel House and PJ Tucker. These were, I think, pretty big additions, especially PJ Tucker. We know what PJ Tucker is at this point. He's a 3-and-D guy. Provides that veteran leadership,
championship experience.
Exactly, and he adds that it factor to the team. Daniel House coming for you off the bench is a great addition. He really showed out with the Utah Jazz last season. With a much bigger offensive role. So I think he's going to do great for the Philadelphia 76ers off of the bench. And overall, man, Philadelphia 76ers just don't have that many weaknesses. They're coming into the season greatly improved as a talented team, and also with their in-house talent, improving. Another guy that I didn't mention yet was Matisse Thybulle. He had a rough season last season. But no restrictions for him this season. We'll see what he can do and if he can improve his offensive game in addition to his already great defensive game.
Yeah, I mean, again, we clown Daryl Morey for bringing his guys in, but that's what a lot of general managers do, especially newer general managers or newer executives. They'll bring in their guys, the guys who they're familiar with. Actually, it's kind of funny, ironic. Daryl Morey drafted Montrezl Harrell, which is kind of funny. But either way, it's these are solid pickups. I think it fills a lot of the depth concerns that the Sixers had last season, which was a big reason why they weren't able to advance past the second round. Was just because, again, Embiid being so broken down had to carry a huge load. Harden wasn't himself. Maxey was the brightest spot that they had. But again, these additions are definitely going to pay dividends to them, especially for the postseason, which is what they're aiming for this season. Moving us on into the third seed. And for the third seed, we are projecting it to be the Boston Celtics. Roughly around 52 to 57 wins. Again, the East will be a dogfight. But again, just like the Bucks, it's basically the same team as last year. I mean, they added some pieces to fill some holes, especially in the case of Malcolm Brogdon.
Well, that was the big one, right?
Yeah, he was the big piece. They did add Danilo Gallinari, but unfortunately he ended up getting hurt and he'll be out for the season. But they added Blake Griffin in to kind of shore up their big man depth. But I think the biggest reason why we had to knock the Celtics back a bit was just because of the offseason turmoil. Like, there was just so much going on for the Celtics. I mean, with the whole Ime Udoka situation, for those of you that were living under a rock, I mean, Ime Udoka basically broke team protocol and violated team rules, and they suspended him for a season. And
based on, listen, the whole Ime Udoka thing, like, we can't really comment on it because there's not many details out there, but from what, the general rumor is he might just be gone after the suspension, which is not great for the Boston Celtics and for a guy that just led a team to the finals, right? So, I mean, you have all of that up in the air.
I mean, there are some racial question marks here and there, but regardless of the fact, there is a lot of blame and fault to be put on Ime Udoka because it was kind of his fault. But regardless, the Celtics don't really have a head coach. Their head coach right now, they have obviously the interim who was an assistant for them last season. But again, it's not the same as when you have your head coach who can implement his systems, and it's a consistent, train moving forward. Especially with them coming off of an NBA Finals appearance, like it's gonna be a shaky start for sure for the Celtics. And then on top of that, Robert Williams is also hurt for them, and he's gonna miss some time at the beginning of the season, which will hurt their center depth. And I mean, again, as good as Al Horford is for them, he's getting older. He's not the same guy, and you can't really expect him to be a starting caliber center anymore. Which Robert Williams in the playoffs really proved how valuable he actually was. But unfortunately, injuries has been a big concern for him.
Again, the real defensive player of the year. Just saying that. For the number 4 seed, we are putting the Brooklyn Nets with 50 to 55 wins.
With a huge asterisk.
This, again, like Hani said, this is a huge asterisk, right? Because this is a big unknown of the Eastern Conference, I think. Nobody really knows what this team is going to be. Ideally, if all big three play, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, if they play like 60 games together, they should easily make the playoffs just with the talent that they have. But the problem is, like, who knows what's going on with them, right? Kevin Durant, he's coming back now. I think Kevin Durant will be fine. He's proven that when he's on the court, he's fine, right? And he doesn't really do much off of it. I guess this is the first time that we've really seen Kevin Durant do something crazy on a team when he wasn't a free agent, right? Kyrie Irving, I think, is the big question mark because nobody knows when he's going to play. And then Ben Simmons, like, we don't know what's up with this guy, right? So, ideally, I think with all three guys, you will at least win around maybe 50 games. But, Ben Simmons is a question mark. Even despite Ben Simmons being question mark, I think even with his current production, he still serves a huge purpose for the Brooklyn Nets, and he still does a lot for your team in terms of, the defense and the playmaking. So, again, even if Ben Simmons doesn't get any better offensively, at least for the regular season, he'll still be pretty good for the Brooklyn Nets.
And even from the small sample size that I've seen of them in the preseason, like, you can see how this trio could actually work well together, even with Simmons' inability to shoot the ball. Just the fact that, again, he's a 6'10 guy who can play the point, he can handle. And when you're kicking out to Kevin Durant on your right and Kyrie Irving on your left, I mean, the sound of that, and from the limited time we were able to see it, it looked pretty good. But again, it's the question mark on will they play at the same time. and how well will they be playing?
And I mean, the main question mark and the main issue with them last year wasn't necessarily their offense; it was their defense, right?
Yeah.
And when
Simmons
you
will
add,
help that.
and exactly when you add Ben Simmons to that, that helps a lot for the Brooklyn Nets. And they're also gonna have to pretty much just squeak out as much production as they can from the other guys. Patty Mills, obviously, he's getting older, but Markieff Morris, Cam Thomas,
They're
T.J.
getting Joe Harris
Warren.
back.
Yeah, T.J. Warren if he plays, Nick Claxton. So you're asking as much as you can from the other guys. You
They also
don't
picked up
have
Royce
Bruce.
O'Neal.
Yeah, Royce O'Neal is another one. You don't have Bruce Brown anymore, who I think was your basically third best player last season. But it is what it is for the Brooklyn Nets. And if you're a fan of the Brooklyn Nets, I would be very terrified, but also maybe excited.
Yeah, like the regular season is a big question mark for the Brooklyn Nets. But bringing us into the 5th seed, and man, this one really hurts. Because honestly, before they made this trade, I wouldn't have put them as high as 5th. But after the trade, this seems low-key scary. And I'm talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're projecting them anywhere between 49 to 54 wins. And this team made some huge additions in the offseason. I mean, they made the biggest splash of the offseason by just making the trade for Donovan Mitchell. And the big thing for me is that they didn't have to give up any of their core players to do it, which is insane. All they had to give up was Lowry Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and some draft capital, basically, which for Donovan Mitchell is a steal of a deal, in my opinion. And again, Mitchell, on top of the young core that they have, they're getting year 2 of Evan Mobley, more experience for their young guys. Darius Garland coming off an all-star campaign. So is Jared Allen. Karis LeVert, again, solid player for them. Isaac Okoro. Kevin Love coming off of a potential 6th Man of the Year campaign. There's a lot to like with this Cleveland team. They have good depth. They're young. They're athletic. The defense is actually going to be really good for this Cleveland team. They still have the GOAT, Chetty Osman. And again, I think because they're a younger team, they're going to be a lot more motivated to win games in the regular season. And I think when you're replacing a guy like Colin Sexton's scoring production with a guy like Donovan Mitchell, that's only going to increase this team's potential.
I mean, not to mention, Colin Sexton didn't even play last season, and Cleveland was as good as they were, right?
Yeah.
Before all the injuries happened. And now you're adding Donovan Mitchell to that. The Cleveland Cavaliers are just a very, very balanced and a very good team overall. Like, there's not really many weaknesses you can pinpoint on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, the one thing you can say for them is that they don't have that guy that can take them over the top. But, I mean, our discussion's about regular season, right? And then in the playoffs, anything can happen, right? If you have a good enough team, you can do great things in the playoffs. I think the main thing is for this Cleveland Cavaliers team is that they have great players all around the team, particularly with their starting lineup, with their twin towers up front, their great backcourt. And then whoever you want to plug in at the 3. Isaac Okoro, I think, can be pretty good for you. Now, there are questions about his offense, but his defense works very well in this Cleveland Cavaliers system. So Cleveland as a 5th seed, I think, is great for Cleveland fans. And I think Cleveland fans, again, should be the most excited they've ever been since
Shout out
LeBron.
Kobe Altman. He's done a great job.
Yeah.
Like, this has been some good work for him.
It's been good for Cleveland fans for the first time basically since LeBron. For the 6th seed, we're going to go on a homer pick. Not really, but, I mean, it is, the Toronto Raptors we're projecting around 48 to 53 wins. Now, with the Toronto Raptors, first of all, they added a great piece in Otto Porter. And then they re-signed their key guys that they needed to re-sign, right? Chris Boucher and Thaddeus Young. So they brought back essentially the same team, slightly better as the one from last year. That was the 5th seed. And for the Toronto Raptors, you have time, right? They're not looking to make a championship push right now unless a trade opens up. But they're mostly just banking on internal improvement to get better, particularly with guys like Scotty Barnes, Delano Banton, and then to a lesser degree guys like Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet who are trying to get, marginally better with their games as well. Precious Achiuwa is another one who, he had his flashes in this preseason, I think, as well. Overall, I think the main question for the Toronto Raptors is it's the question of whether the system that Nick Nurse has implemented, whether it makes up for the talent gap between this team and the teams that we're going to talk about that we ranked below them. Because I think if you look at the talent on paper, definitely some of the teams that we rank below the Toronto Raptors have more talent, arguably. But we've seen time and time again, right? Especially teams like San Antonio, Toronto. It's just the collection of talent on a system works very well. And it can do a lot of great things and make up for that talent gap.
And you have to also factor in a couple of things with the Raptors. Number one, they've all been basically working out and playing together pretty much the entire summer in the Rico Hines run, who Rico Hines is now an assistant coach for the Raptors. So, again, they've been working on the chemistry. They've been working guys in. They've been, Pascal's always there working. So, again, they've been kind of working on building that chemistry for the regular season. Paul George said it, that these guys should be good to start the year, which is actually factual information. But I think at the same time, they're coming back healthier. Pascal Siakam, again, he didn't get an offseason last season because of his injury. He had to do rehab and all that stuff. So now you're getting him Pascal with an offseason, healthier, fresh. He's not missing the beginning of the season. Again, an offseason for Scotty Barnes, offseason for OG. Kem Birch was able to get healthy. So again, this is a team that is going to be building off of what they did last season, which, again, last season was a very positive result, making it to the playoffs as a 5th seed. And honestly, I mean, besides the first 2 games, but pushing the Sixers to 6, in terms of actually remaining competitive in a series that they probably should have lost or gotten swept in. But honestly, I'm excited. I think the Raptors have a lot of potential. And again, if some of their pieces, if Scotty Barnes takes that next step, look out, man. He looks really good in the preseason, man.
I think one interesting thing for the Toronto Raptors is that you see with a lot of other up-and-coming teams is which players get, shoved out of the way, right? Gary Trent Jr.'s contract situation is going to be a thing this season. Malachi Flynn's situation has been a thing for the past couple of seasons, and with Delano Ben's supposed improvement in the preseason, Malachi Flynn could be that next guy out. So there's going to be some questions, I think, with this Toronto Raptors team in terms of, the team building for Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster. But either way, I think the main thing for this Toronto team is just getting better each game and trying to do a little bit better than they did last season.
Yeah, for sure. But Toronto's 6th seed, I think, seems pretty reasonable. Bringing us into the 7th seed. Now, this is where a lot of people are going to start questioning us. But we're predicting it to be the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat, we're projecting them anywhere between 47 to 52 wins. And again, similar to other teams like Boston and Milwaukee, they're bringing back basically the same team as last year. And then that was a team that got the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, minus PJ Tucker, who of course went to the Sixers. But I think the biggest thing that people are overlooking with Miami is the fact that this is an older team. Like, a lot of their main guys, like Jimmy Butler is over 30. I think he's like 33 or 34 at this point. Kyle Lowry is going into 37. I mean, they still figuring Udonis Haslem on the roster. I mean, Dwayne Dedmon's 30. Like, a lot of their guys are either relatively old or super young. So there's not really an in-between there for the Miami Heat. And not to mention, when you're talking about some of the guys, the younger guys, again, we saw what happened to Duncan Robinson when he got paid. He basically became unplayable. I really like Max Strus, but again, you're going to have to eventually pay him too. And the problem with him is that, again, can he be better on defense or at least somewhat effective if the shot isn't working? That's a question mark for him. Then you're talking about Tyler Hero, another guy who just got paid a big contract. Again, where they're expecting him to get a bigger role, of course, with the bigger deal. Will he actually live up to that contract, or again, like Duncan Robinson, will he regress? It's a lot of question marks for the Miami Heat, and I think overall other teams in the East either got better than the Miami Heat, or in general they have less question marks. I think with the Heat, we're gonna have to see with how healthy they're gonna be able to be, how good will the young guys take a next step. I think in particular Bam Adebayo has a lot of question marks in me. I think he needs to take another step for this team to be more successful.
Well, I mean, he has been shooting more threes now, so.
I mean, again, if it's involving shooting, but just being more assertive, more aggressive, so there's a lot of question marks with the Miami Heat, hence why we are having them at the 7th seed.
And again, this isn't really a knock on Miami. It's just like the Eastern Conference is loaded at this point. This is the similar point that we made about
and they still
a lot of the teams in the Western Conference. Exactly. It's just everyone's really good now. Like, you have to knock down a couple of teams who, could be championship contenders and put them as like a lower seed just because of how huge the talent market is in the NBA at this point. Speaking of talent and being a lower seed, our eighth seed will be the Atlanta Hawks. We are projecting around 45 to 50 wins. Now the Atlanta Hawks, for them, they have a lot of talent for sure, and they added, I think, a perfect piece that works well for them. In DeJounte Murray, I think that was a huge trade for them to make. Um, I think that was a huge trade for them to make just because of the fact that he helps you on your weaknesses, right? We know that Atlanta needed some backcourt defense. DeJounte Murray provides that. Atlanta needed some more playmaking and downhill scoring from the guard spots, and DeJounte Murray provides that, right? So now you have two playmakers in the backcourt with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Two guys that can screen for each other as well. Trae Young can play off the ball, and DeJounte Murray can play on the ball now too. And you're seeing more of that this preseason with Trae Young spotting up in the corner a bit more. DeJounte Murray driving and kicking the ball out to him. So I think that's going to be a great addition for the Atlanta Hawks. Hopefully they have a healthy DeAndre Hunter and Onyeka Okongwu now too, because DeAndre Hunter, I think he's shown that he can make great strides, especially in his offensive game. The one thing that might happen for the Atlanta Hawks is a possible Clint Capella trade. Now, this has been in the rumor mill for the last couple of seasons. I think you could really see it ramp up this season just because of the fact that this is the last year of his current contract. He'll want another one, and Atlanta doesn't really have any room to give him a contract, especially with the fact that they have Onyeka Okongwu waiting in the wings. So that, I think, could be a possible question. But again, I think the fact is that they have a really good top couple of guys on their team. Trae Young, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, DeJounte Murray. It's just the questions about the rest of the team, I think, which knocks them down to this 8th seed. Besides, for example, like Bogdanovic, who can be pretty good. The rest of the team is not that great. So where will you get that bottom tier production from? And that's usually the difference in between, being a lower seed and a higher seed.
Yeah, and again, this kind of comes with the territory of the Hawks kind of going all in and locking in their core, paying these guys all big money. I mean, now it makes the top of your team really good, but now you gotta fill the bottom of your team with sort of bargain players or players that you can that you've developed, or cheaper options that can still produce at a high enough level. But again, I really like you said, I really like the DeJounte Murray addition. I think he fits really well with Trae Young. Complements his skill set a lot. I really like DeJounte as a player. I think he can still get better as well. That's the other thing with how young he is. He can still improve and get to another level. Again, I've been a fan of DeAndre Hunter since he was drafted. Onyeka Okongwu has made some good strides, but again, health is going to be the concern with them. Again, Clint Capella, if he's on the trade market, so be it. I think there's going to definitely be suitors for him. But the problem with him, again, is similar to other big men. It's just, will he be playable in the playoffs?
And also health.
Yeah, and health too. That's the biggest thing with Capella. And again, I'm not the biggest Trae Young guy, but I think that this team works better than it did last season. Where last season, it was just kind of, the way to stop the Hawks was just stop Trae Young. You stop Trae Young and the team's done. That was basically how you stop the Hawks. And now it's like you have DeJounte gets the ball, Trae has the ball, they can kind of interchange, and it's kind of what the Warriors do with Steph Curry, is that sometimes they'll have Draymond handle and then run Curry off ball, run him through a ton of screens, and then get him open for some looks. So it keeps the defense honest, but yeah, I think ultimately the Hawks, they're going to be a good team. It's just a matter of will they be better than some of the other teams ahead of them, which at this stage, I just don't think they will be. I think the question marks and the lack of the depth is going to play a factor for them.
And so also the lack of continuity. This is a new team with a new star player. So I think that will play a factor into, some rust from them.
Yeah, for sure. Bringing us into the 9th seed. Now, this is where some people are going to get mad at us. But, I mean, at this point, it is what it is. But we're putting in the Chicago Bulls as the 9th seed. Anywhere between 44 to 49 wins. I mean, could be lower, to be honest with you. But the thing with the Bulls is they're pretty much the same team as last year. They added Andre Drummond. They added higher ambitions, Dragic. That's basically it. It's the same team. They still have Lonzo. They still have Caruso. They still have DeMar. They still have Vooch. It's the same team. They're going to be healthier and also not healthier than last year because, Caruso's back. That's great. Love Alex Caruso. But Lonzo's now hurt again. which is becoming a reoccurring theme with Lonzo, is the fact,
Well, I mean, not technically again, because this is the same injury he had since last season, right?
yeah, but I think a lot of this is attributed to how much basketball, and again, it's a more broader conversation than just Lonzo Ball, but this is becoming more of a trend with younger players getting hurt because of how much basketball they're playing in their younger years and how intensely they're playing. You know, Lonzo's been playing ball since basically he was a young kid to up until now. So of course, all the wear and tear that he's put on his body, on his legs, it's gonna catch up to him eventually, and you're kind of seeing it now where his lower body is kind of isn't really being as effective for him as he wants it to be, you know. And now again, another knee surgery, gonna keep him out for a while. Who knows if he's gonna get back for the season, or when he's gonna get back, or how healthy will he be? But
Well, Chicago's basically prepared for him to not play this season.
yeah,
so.
I mean, and the good thing for Chicago, they have a guy like Ayo Dosunmu who showed some great strides last year in his rookie year. So him coming in as a second year guy, they still have Caruso to run the offense. So they still have a couple of guys there. But I think the problem with the Bulls, and this is the problem with bringing back the exact same team, is the fact that the Bulls team last year were exposed for basically being fraud. Like, they had a great record, but when you actually look at their record, they were just beating up on bad teams. They couldn't beat any playoff caliber team or any high-end or top-tier team, which if you have aspirations to win in the playoffs, you have to beat the top-tier teams. And that's what the Bulls weren't doing. And if you're bringing back that same team that still couldn't do that, has a lot of concerns, especially when other teams in the Eastern Conference have gotten better. It just feels like the Bulls kind of remain in the same spot, or in fact might have regressed when you lose your starting point guard.
Well, I mean, not just like trying to beat teams in the playoffs, but now with the collection of teams that we have now in the Eastern Conference, it's about trying to beat them in the regular season. If last year the Bulls couldn't really beat any good teams, now with this season, every team is a good team, right? So how will they be able to respond to that? And I think Hani brought it up originally that this team is basically as good as DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine can take them. And again, granted, they're two all-star players. They're good players, but they aren't guys that can take you over the top, right? Yeah. Especially now when you don't have Lonzo Ball on the team. We remember last season with Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball, they were like a defensive player of the year type of duo, right? But now with half of that missing, it's going to be on Alex Caruso to kind of carry that defensive load on the perimeter with Ayo Dosunmu as well. So I think the Chicago Bulls, they're a pretty good team, pretty solid team. But the problem is, like I said before, everyone just got better, right?
They'll be in the play-in hunt.
Yeah, basically. They'll be in the play-in hunt. The next team that we have at the 10th seed, and this might be a shocker for a lot of you guys, but we have the New York Knicks. Now, again, granted, New York has been kind of our punching bag for the last few years. We're projecting them to be around 40 to 45 wins. However, I think New York made some strides this offseason. I'm not a fan of their moves, but there's no denying that their moves definitely made them better, at least, right? Adding Jalen Brunson, adding Isaiah Hartenstein, both guys I think definitely help your team out, especially Jalen Brunson. You know, the New York Knicks really struggled on offense. They struggled last year defensively as well, but we know what they're capable of doing defensively. They showed it in their first year under Tom Thibodeau. Ideally, you can play pretty good defense with guys like Mitchell Robinson manning the paint, and he looks really good as well, right? So the question is always basically being under Tom Thibodeau, the offense. And you add in a guy like Jalen Brunson, who really balled out in the playoffs last year. In the preseason, he's shown that he's continuing that moving forward as well. So I think adding in guys like Brunson and Hartenstein really works well for your team. The young players actually look pretty good as well, particularly Obi Toppin, who's looked really, really good so far. He looked really good to end off the season last season, and it looks like he's continuing that moving forward. Now, the question is how much Tom Thibodeau will actually utilize him, especially with Julius Randle in front of him on the depth chart. Now, Julius Randle, we'll see what happens with him. I don't think you can really trade him. But as long as you can get some sort of middle-of-the-ground production between last season and the season that he had before, right, you can get some kind of balance between those. I think it would be a success for the New York Knicks. And then not to mention you have the rest of the supporting cast with guys like Derrick Rose, RJ Barrett. Hopefully, will take that next step forward this season.
I mean, he looked good at the end of last season. That's the thing with RJ. RJ looked good in strides last season. And again, he's still young enough where he can get better.
Yeah.
Like he's one of New York's biggest bright spots, in a sea of very, very dark waters, because again it's the New York Knicks. But again, I like Jalen Brunson, and I think I really liked him with Dallas. I think he's a good player, and good for him. He got his money, but the Knicks overpaid for him. That's number one. They completely overpaid for him. They tampered for him too, which is also stupid.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like everyone tampers.
But like they got caught for tampering. Like that's stupid. The Knicks actually got caught for tampering with and then for Jalen Brunson out of all players. But regardless, Brunson will help them in terms of actually getting them a guy to fill that point guard spot. But I think they're not going to be dramatically better than last season, and I think that's that's kind of what the Knicks are at this point. Again, Randall is who he is. If he remembers the other right hand, then great. But I don't think that's going to happen. RJ, I'm actually more excited for RJ Barrett than I am for Obi Toppin, just because I think RJ seems to be the true face of the team. He seems to be the true guy that you should be building around. You know, he has the potential. It's just whether or not, again, A, can he put the pieces together, and B, will the Knicks kind of embrace him as being the number one guy, which we'll have to see, man. But honestly, the Knicks they're the Knicks, man.
Well, here's the thing too, right? We have them as a 10 seed. Like we said before, the 7th to 10th seeds can all be interchangeable, right? Just because of the play-in tournament now. So the 7 to 10 seeds are not exactly locked into place.
Or the Knicks could fall.
Yeah, or that.
Or typical Knicks.
Or, I mean, somehow they could surprise us like they did a couple seasons ago, but I'm not banking on it.
No. Would not bet on that. Moving us on into the 11th seed, a team that I'm actually excited for and actually very happy for. It's the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons, unfortunately, beat our Raptors multiple times last season.
Man, they were cursed against them.
The Dwayne Casey cursed us. But regardless, they can have that. We can keep this. But either way, we're projecting anywhere between 39 to 43 wins. Probably generous on the win total, but regardless, I mean, the thing with the Pistons is that they're finally moving in a direction, which is something that we couldn't say about them a couple of seasons ago. You know, like now they made some solid additions. They just traded for Bojan Bogdanovic.
That was a good trade.
It was a pretty solid trade. You know, they got Alec Burks. They drafted Jaden Ivey, who's probably going to be pretty good, really good for this team. And again, you now have year 2 of Cade Cunningham, and Cade Cunningham was really good last season. One of my favorites to watch in terms of, again, just the poise, the command, all the things that we kind of talked about Cade Cunningham coming into the draft. It was a slow start for him, obviously, with the injury. But, man, once he got going, he was really good.
Especially his clutch time performance, man.
Yeah. This guy's going to be really special. And, again, you now have a better constructed roster, I think. You got rid of some guys that really didn't fit your team very well. Like, you kind of moved off the Kelly Olynyk's. You kind of embraced got more wing guys involved. And, again, the young guys are still going to be able to grow in this system. You know, Sadiq Bey took some great strides last year. He's going to be better than last year. Killian Hayes taking on the backup role. He's going to be better. Isaiah Stewart, more polish for him.
Hopefully not trying to punch people, but
hopefully. You know. But I mean, hey, you always need one of those guys. Yeah. I mean, Draymond's there too. Yeah. But again, they're getting a full season of Marvin Bagley. So again, the Pistons are moving in a direction, and they should be more competitive this year than previous seasons, which is actually exciting for them.
Yeah, like I don't think they're gonna win as much as Pistons fans hope, just because of the fact it's a lack of experience, right? But they definitely, I think, are gonna be more competitive, and this isn't really the season for them to try to win a championship, anyways, right? They're building for the future.
If they can make the play-in, that'll be a huge success for them.
Exactly. And from this point moving forward, they're gonna go a bit quicker, just because it's the bottom of the East.
The garbage of the East.
Number 12, we have the Washington Wizards with maybe 35 to 38 wins. That might be a bit generous, but it's the same old team. It's Kristaps Porzingis, Bradley Beal, like Kyle Kuzma, Rui. It's the same thing. Like, there's nothing special about this team. They somehow started out really good last season, and they quickly fell back down to earth.
I mean, was that surprising to anybody?
It's the same old.
Pretty much. The number 13 seed, we're going with the Orlando Magic. Now, again, win totals, I would say above 32 seems reasonable. But it could be anywhere between 32 to 37 wins, really. Paolo Banchero is going to be pretty exciting to watch in his rookie year. He came in with a lot of hype. Obviously, him being the number one selection in the draft surprised some people, but also didn't surprise some people. So how is he going to look? They now took the crown. The Magic took the crown from the OKC Thunder of having the toothpick centers. They now have Bol and Mo Bamba.
So Bamba beefed up, to be fair.
Listen, he's still a toothpick. But either way, the Magic should be interesting. Jonathan Isaac should be back this year. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with him. But overall, they're still a rebuilding team with some nice pieces.
They do seem to have more of a direction of where they want to go. Which is something to be excited about. But the problem with the Orlando Magic is whatever they've done in the past couple of years, they literally get hit with injuries every 5 seconds, and that's continued on into this season, unfortunately. So, and that kind of sucks. Number 14, we have the Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets, they're gonna be a pretty bad team, except for like LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier. Hopefully James Bouknight can do something. Gordon Hayward will get probably traded this season.
Probably.
And yeah, the Charlotte Hornets, all their progress from like the last couple of years has basically just gone down the drain.
Thanks a lot, Miles Bridges.
Yeah, especially with Miles Bridges. So, that's that.
Yeah, pretty much. And then finally the number 15 seed. It's the Indiana Pacers. And again, how many wins they're going to get? Enough to tank. Because they are literally tanking. At this point, they traded away all their guys. Miles Turner is probably going to be traded as well. The biggest bright spot is still Tyrese Halliburton, who, again, was a very good pickup for them last season, trading away Sabonis, getting Halliburton, so he's going to be a great building block for the future. But they're in the tank game for Victor Wembanyama, who has impressed a lot of people with how he's played, I think, in the G League showcase and stuff like that. But, again, they're fully tanking.
Yeah. But it's officially a tank for Wembanyama season. So
pretty much. But those were our Eastern Conference predictions. Again, we might do a revision here and there depending on if there's a massive injury or massive trade. But we're only allowing us maybe I believe 2 revisions, and that's all going to be before or right after the All-Star break. That's our cutoff, pretty much. So we can revise this a couple of times, but that's it. But overall, man, I'm pretty happy with these predictions. Will they come to fruition? Like every year, who really knows?
No, they probably won't.
We could be sitting here and being like we're dead wrong.
Every single year, we always end up getting everything wrong. Yes. And that's just how it goes in the NBA.
Yeah, so definitely subscribe to the show because in the offseason, we do typically look back on these predictions and see how well or how not well we did. But
mostly not well.
Yeah, pretty much. But definitely stay tuned for that in the future. But finally, just a quick up and under segment for this week. Are you up or under on the Draymond Green and Jordan Poole situation? Now, for context, of course, Jordan Poole and Draymond Green were in practice. I guess Jordan Poole was kind of feeling himself. He was talking a lot of smack. Draymond Green did not appreciate that and decided, I'm going to put this young kid in his place who's about to get a big contract. I'm going to put it in his face. And he put him into his place, literally right by the wall, by punching him full force to the point where Jordan Poole literally... Oh, sorry, I forgot one detail that Draymond confronted him. Poole pushed Draymond, and that pushed him over the edge. Draymond came in with a Superman punch, and, the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, so, I guess I would say I'm up on it from an NBA perspective, just the drama of the NBA. But obviously, I'm definitely under on it, especially if you're a Warriors fan, because, obviously you don't want fights to happen and whatnot, especially if, good thing the punch wasn't, that serious, right? So, I think it is what it is, right? Draymond's being Draymond. That's basically what Draymond's been throughout his career. And then Jordan Poole, I despite what Draymond says about the contract thing not playing a factor, I think it definitely plays a factor. Because at this point, it's either Jordan Poole or Draymond.
Pretty much.
And we all know that the choice is probably going to be Jordan Poole, rightfully so. And so I think you have a lot of questions looming over these two guys and their situations within the organization. I think for Golden State, it's just about, making things all right and then trying to win another championship, right? Winning cures all things. It's just, I think the memes from this situation are the funniest thing, especially those Draymond Green, LeBron James memes,
I mean,
so-
Trae Young tweeted that freaking Draymond trying to go to LA, and I'm like, yo, Trae, you're gonna get fined. Like, I'm sorry, man, but like, honestly speaking, and again, I feel like I'm the only. Everyone's saying, oh, you know, he shouldn't have punched him and all that stuff. But what did Jordan Poole actually say to push Draymond over the edge? I get it, the contract thing is a thing, but man, I have a problem with young players really feeling themselves too much because as someone, as an old, I guess an old head myself, I just think if you're going to talk smack, or you're going to talk shit, I mean, you're going to expect a reaction from somebody. Now, Draymond should have been in control of his emotions, but I don't think Poole didn't 100% deserve it. Like, I feel like he kind of had it coming if what he said was that triggering to Draymond, you know? And again, Draymond is very hot-tempered. Poole should have known that, but I just think it's one of those situations. You know, the real guy who's probably going to get screwed the most is the guy who leaked the video.
Yeah, that guy's screwed.
That guy's screwed. Like, if they find him, they're going to... That guy
Nah, man, that's a legal suit coming, bro.
Pretty much.
That's some legal stuff coming.
Yeah, so that guy's in trouble. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, Draymond is going to be stepping away from the team for...
It's basically a suspension without him actually getting suspended.
Pretty much. I mean, this will probably mellow down and kind of phase out, but ultimately... Not a great look for the defending champion Warriors, but hey, they're the defending champs, so it is what it is. But with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and of course on YouTube. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss any great episodes from us in the future. Our goal is to try to be a lot more consistent than we were this past since the last episode. So definitely stay tuned for that. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at UpLetterN_podcast, Facebook.com/UpAndUnderPodcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or reaction to news as they occur. So definitely, follow us there for all the latest updates. Also, check out our website, UpAndUnderPodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's a place where we write blog posts with every single episode, so if you don't have time to listen or watch the full thing, you can read about it on our website. Every episode has the video, audio, and the written version all in one place. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so. And yeah, man, the regular season is basically upon us. I mean, at the time of recording, it'll be next week. But exciting times, man. Exciting times for sure.
NBA is back. Oh.
The NBA is back. But with that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.